Okay, so guys, welcome again. All those who joined this evening, and also those who are watching us on YouTube. We are very happy to start this new series called Flying Weather. And today we, start with the first episode called the introduction. Goes without saying, how important weather is and how important a role it plays, for a pilot. And this is really a good time to kind of build up knowledge uh, that'll kind of go a long way in making us more informed, more knowledgeable, and more safe and competent pilots. So I'll just share a few examples which will develop for you an insight as to how things can really go wrong if you don't know what the sky is doing. So the first example is, I read this in a forum, and it stuck with me about 15 years back, I think. So there's a flying site in Italy. There's a pilot who drives to the takeoff with his friend, takes his glider out, looks around. There are 15 pilots in the sky. There's some clouds around. He sees, okay, people are flying. He takes off. In a short while, the cumulus that was there just behind the takeoff started to develop, and all 16 pilots get sucked and are inside the cloud. And nobody knows how to spiral down or other maneuvers to get out of the situation. Only one guy knows how to spiral. This guy gets into a spiral dive, but doesn't know how to recover, and spirals down to the ground. It's a fatal accident. And the cloud somehow dissipates, and all the rest 15 kind of come out of the cloud and land safely. Now the learning here is that you cannot depend on other people's level of knowledge of weather. You go to a site, you see 15 people are flying, you cannot really assume that, okay, it's good for me to go. This should make every pilot think, and this made me think and made me realize that, okay, I need to know my playground really well to take safe decisions and not depend on others. So this is one example that can give you an insight into what can go wrong. Second example is in Kamshet. It is from a couple of years ago. I would say like 3-4 years ago. It was the end of the season. We had declared the season to be closed. We had stopped operations, both training and tandems. And but still, we only had pre-monsoon showers, and the monsoon was yet to hit the Maharashtra region. One day, I get a call from a club pilot who's wanting to go and fly at Pavna. And of course, I discourage telling that wind conditions pre-monsoon, the wind directions change very fast, the speed changes very fast. It's not the best time to fly. Actually, I'm playing volleyball right now. That's when I got the call. Come over, let's have a nice game of volleyball. I was trying to dissuade them. I know what can happen, but one can only suggest to an extent. So one guy is on his 100th flight. He's done 99 flights, and he wants to do this 100th flight before the season closes. Second guy who teams up with him is from the Merchant Navy, who's a shippy, who has maybe 50-60 hours of experience, and who's just come back from sea. The season is closed, but he wants to fly. Okay, so both are like kind of a little bit desperate to fly, and they both decide to go. And they're on the takeoff. They wait for the conditions to get okay. They take off, and then one guy has this very serious, massive collapse after launch because of the side rotors, smashes into the ground, almost all the bones broken, survived. Villagers came. The school was not there to help, to give assistance for the stretcher and the bus and everything. So villagers helped a lot, and this other shippy guy got him to the hospital, multiple fractures and everything. The learning in this one is that they wanted to fly so badly, and they misread the conditions. They saw what they wanted to see, not what was actually there. So this is the learning here, to see what is really out there and not see what you want to see because of what you want to achieve. In monsoon, the wind direction changes fast. Maybe it was head on, they took off, maybe it changed, and he had side rotors coming, collapse, and boom. So this is, the second example that I would like to share with this learning, that you need to see what is, not what you want. And third example is it happened a few years back in Oludeniz in Turkey, and it also happened in Pokhara, where Oludeniz is a tandem flying site, and there was a time that there was a thunderstorm. Pilots didn't read it properly, and in the downdraft, the direction changed, and there were strong winds, and there were 40 tandem pilots in the sea. They were pushed out, and they had to land with their passengers in the sea. And it was similar, in Pokhara as well, where there were about 15, 16, whatever, tandem pilots in the lake because they didn't read the downdraft of the cumulonimbus. So you can see, like, a collective of so many pilots can all be wrong if they don't, read the sky properly. So just three examples which can go a long way in understanding that I need to be responsible to understand the sky myself and to take a safe decision for myself. I cannot just depend on other pilots in the sky. So with that, today is the first episode where we are introducing you to basic concepts of forecasting, which will go a long way to build up your understanding and understanding of the concepts to understand the future episodes that we organize for weather. Okay, we'll go into deeper stuff in the later episodes. Today we start with the fundamentals, and with that I hand you over to Sachin, who will take over now. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Avi. Thanks a lot. I think that was a brilliant start. You put ahead a platform where now we all understand the seriousness of understanding of the weather. Yes, it defines our safety, but at the same time, if you take wise decisions, what it offers is something which is very beautiful, where we spend our time watching these beautiful videos, even though we are not flying, but we watch these videos and we enjoy it. And this is purely because what weather has to offer us. And without engine, we are able to fly. What I would like to now do is take a step back. I don't just want to start with talking about flying weather. My main objective in today's session is to touch your heart in a way that you understand the real importance of weather, be it flying or in a normal life, so that there is something inside you which becomes curious and you start finding out information. Because this is something which I'm talking from my experience. Like, I was a very lame student in the school. Like, I never was interested in history or science. It just didn't never click for me. But from the time I have joined Templepilots, from the time I have started flying, this topic has touched me in a very deep way. And now my eyes, like when we were talking to Malhar and there was a split second, I could see cumulus clouds. I like, okay, great weather. So I really want to share this space with you where you can be there and now take interest, understand more about weather, and now start becoming safe and competent pilots. So that's the first objective of today's session. Okay. Then further, when we go in the further sessions, we will talk about different concepts like fronts and pressure systems, sounding. But today, I am not going to touch base anything on this sort. The second thing which I would like to say is these are not training sessions. You already have attended theory capsules in school. So we expect that you go through it, do some revision, and come up with questions. We are okay to have questions, but we don't want to do in-depth theory sessions. We would rather have the way Avi was talking, the real life examples, which will really give you a good picture that what happens, because paragliding is more about flying than theory. And this is the essence which we would like to continue in our sessions. Okay. So about weather. So as I said, I don't want to talk about flying weather, just weather. Now, weather plays such a big role in our lives. Like, just take a moment and understand that what we eat, what we wear, the vacations we plan, the planning of government, the food which we grow, the commodity market, the stock market. There are so many things which are interconnected just because of weather. And it's just not human being. The whole life cycle of every living being is revolving around weather. So I hope you can take a step back and really see that, okay, we just take this topic for granted. We don't really appreciate, and I mean, it's okay. I mean, we can appreciate in if you're not a paragliding pilot, but when you become a paragliding pilot, you have a brilliant opportunity to actually understand where the how the wind is blowing, how the pressure systems are forming, how your place on earth defining what kind of weather it is. So these are the things which we would like to touch base on. All right. So the first thing is weather, and the second thing is weather forecast. One thing is weather in itself is so complicated because you can't see what's happening. You really have to rely on a lot of science, and now in the modern world, a lot of data. And weather forecast is a thing where you really have to have a lot of data, and now you're forecasting what's going to happen. So that is a different complication altogether. So again, when you are just looking at Windfinder, Windy, and these guys are presenting this data just for free for us, I mean, that's really a big deal. I think that's a big deal, because I hope that now, after listening to me now, at least you can feel that it's a big deal, because otherwise we just think, ah, okay, fine. But yeah, it's a big deal, because a lot of efforts which goes behind building a weather model, the collection of data, the weather balloons, and there are certain things which I will come to, and we will just briefly explain you those things so that again you get an understanding of that. Okay. So that's how I just wanted to start about the weather and weather forecast. So I hope now the base is there, and there is an interest, and there is a curiosity in you, which I hope that you would go back and you read, and then it will be more interactive kind of a sessions going forward. All right. Okay. So with that, also,
So
there's one thing which, yes, sorry, just before I forget, whatever examples, what even Avi said, and even when I was doing my research on this topic, I was trying to find out the statistics that how many accidents and incidents happen in paragliding because of weather. But interestingly, it's not weather which is responsible for incident or accident. It is the pilot choice to fly in such weather which decides the incidents and accident. So this data, actually, I didn't find much on this data, but I could easily understand that we easily blame that today is a bad weather day or a good weather day. But eventually, it boils down to your ability to take a well-informed decision. Yes, Avi.
I just wanted to add, you were mentioning about weather's influence on our lives,
Yeah,
and weather as a science has come a long way. Now we are able to save lives. We are able to inform farmers. We are able to save our fishermen. We are able to predict cyclones to a great extent and evacuate, areas. So a lot of money goes into, improving the science of weather forecasting. So we have, come a really long way in improving forecasting.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. When I was researching, in fact, I could understand that it was around 1950s they started a first mathematical model. And I mean, the way it has evolved, and even now we can't say that we know things, we know how to forecast weather 100% accurate. We have not reached, and maybe we won't reach that place. So that's the beauty of the weather. Cool. So with this, I would like to share my screen. Okay, so that's Avi is flying in Annecy, and he's very happy. You can see.
That's the end of a nice cross country in this beautiful area, you know.
Yeah,
So yeah.
can imagine. Okay, so would like to ask you guys a question. What do you think? Which type of cloud is it? What's the name of this cloud?
Towering cumulus.
Okay, you have options in front of you. We are using the tech, so please go ahead.
Cumulus congenitus.
Array, it
You
is
can
for everyone to click. Please click.
Oh, sorry about that.
Please
Sorry.
click on the option and submit. Everybody's got it. Like it'll be 100% result now.
I can see the result suddenly changed after. Okay, should I show the result? Everybody?
Yes, please.
Very nice. Cumulus congestus. Very good. Okay, so
Good.
sorry, before I again forget, we have some commercial pilots just like Prashant just answered. So please, if you want to have you want to share your perspective, you can please come in and share your perspective whenever you feel like, because generally, because of your background, you have more information, more knowledge. So please don't hesitate to add on to things whenever you feel like, okay? Okay, so about the start of this session, I wanted to start with this type of cloud is because basically in the school or in general, when we start flying, when we are learning theory, we talk that, okay, which is the most dangerous cloud? And we say, okay, cumulonimbus. Even the aircrafts, they don't fly inside the cumulonimbus. Yes, but this is cumulus congested, which is not really have gone into a cumulonimbus mode. It may happen maybe in half an hour, but the kind of development which is there in this particular cloud, it shows that there is a lot of power. The vertical length of the cloud is pretty high, and even such cloud on a commercial plane's radar will show that, okay, you should be avoiding this type of a cloud. We will be conducting one more session purely just for the clouds, and we will be discussing much more things. But I just wanted to give you an idea and a perspective that if you take if this is particular cloud which is dangerous, then don't just think that only that is the dangerous. There are many different variables. Now imagine if the commercial aircraft, which is like pretty heavy and made up of metal, is avoiding such type of cloud, what would happen to a paraglider? I mean, if you go online and do some research on accident reports which have happened because of CBs or even cumulus congestus, you will find a lot of reports. And I'm sure you must have seen the one small documentary where one Austrian pilot in Australia, she is stuck into a cumulonimbus spiraling, not able to come down, and gone till around 8,000 meters plus, and she survived. It was purely a magic and one-off situation. So yeah, so just wanted to give you a perspective that just don't believe in one fact. Do your R&D, but there are many different variables which are associated to a topic. Okay. Now, as a beginner, you would always ask these questions, and of course, as an experienced pilot, also you will ask this question. The first thing is, what is the best weather to fly for me? So now what I would like to say, the best weather, the answer is actually, it depends. It depends on what? It depends on your piloting skills, your experience, where you are flying, what's your flying site, and what is your objective. So now let's go back to pilot level. So if you want to know, if I say like Pratik, like if you are planning your weekend and you want to come and you want to fly, Pratik, what do you check when you are planning your flying? What do you check? Like, how's your plan?
Usually at this level, it's just the wind direction and the wind speed. And
Perfect.
are we in the flying season or not? And typically some pointers that the instructors would have said that, okay, Jan to Feb is a little bit of switching time, so you can expect a little bit of turbulence. Just information that has already been percolated down from the instructors to the students.
Very good, Pratik. Now, imagine if you are in Beer, okay? I know you have not flown there, but still, from your knowledge, your process would be the same if you're flying in Beer? Would you do this exactly same things?
Not really, because Beer is a non-windy site, so I will probably try to see if it's a stable or an unstable day. So I'll know that what level can I see the cloud base, and if it's a really unstable day, then I can expect the cloud base is going to be really high. If I can expect inversion or not, probably look at the skew-t and then decide if I am able to read the skew-t properly.
In theory, okay,
Yeah.
good. So, but just one more thing, you said that you will check the stability, instability, skew-t. But say, for example, at your current level, you are going there and just doing a top-down flight.
Okay.
So now your objective has changed. It's not a thermaling or a cross-country flight.
Correct.
Now, will you really be looking at about skew-t or other factors?
Not really. Then I'll probably just go there and try and see if I see any major overdevelopment happening in terms of if it's suddenly the wind speed is just suddenly picking up and dropping, and if I see other pilots, you know, doing a lot of like if there's a lot of turbulence in the air, is that would something be flying off? But not really. I would. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you, Pratik. So clearly now Pratik has done a 20-day course. He has his own glider, and he is now reading through books. So beautifully, he has answered the questions that if you're flying in Kamshet, the flying site, which is the first point, flying site, it is defining what kind of weather forecast you are checking. So you're just checking for wind direction and wind strength, because basically in Kamshet you fly early morning, late evenings, and mainly it's a dynamic soaring. So you're not really too much bothered about other things, unless your flying objective is changing. If your objective now includes thermaling or a cross-country flying, now you will, even in Kamshet, you will look at skew-t, you will look at the stability and instability, and vice versa. If you're in Beer, even though you're a beginner and you are doing a top-down flight, you will just look at main things so that you are avoiding the dangers, but still you will have a comprehensive picture, because that site demands a pilot to look through all these things. Okay, and of course the pilot level, depending on your level, you decide what kind of flying you are going to do. Now, say for example, generally in a season, I have personally seen in Kamshet, there are at least 2 weeks where the wind strength is super high. It is going up till around 30, 40, 45 kilometers. And then we generally publish that it's a perfect conditions for kiting, because we have smaller gliders. So if your objective is to improve your ground handling and kiting skills, your pilot level is such, then you can actually understand how the weather is and how can I bloom my skills depending on all these criteria. So generally, when you are taking a decision, you should be focusing on these 3 things. Okay. The next point is, what are the weather conditions in which I can fly? So this is, again, it depends. It depends on your level. It depends on where you are habituated to fly. So in my case, I'll give you a very honest example. I learned in Kamshet and have been used to flying in Kamshet. Blue skies, hardly any cloud, a little bit of cloud, and we said, oh, today is cloudy. So Kamshet offers very different, and I would say in terms of clouds, we don't have too much of clouding. But moment we went to Greece and France and Italy, and I was surprised to see that even though the whole sky is covered with clouds, but they are not dangerous clouds. Still, it was a very different kind of a feeling for me. And there were times, in fact, we were flying in France, St. Andrews, and we had good height, and we were all doing this cross-country flight around 60 kilometers. And I personally was very uncomfortable, because the clouds which were starting to form were momentous cloud. You can Google this word and you will see the shape of the cloud is not really very comforting. And I was like really uncomfortable, but still we were on full speed bar and big gears, and we are going towards our landing zone. And Avi was a little bit high and almost maybe 100, 200 feet below the cloud. And I like, okay, Avi, please keep an eye, keep an eye, keep an eye. And we did the complete flying. We landed. And then I told him that I was just not comfortable. How come you were there and you were not feeling stressed? And he just told me that on my Vario, it was just 0.5 meter per second. It was beeping all the time. So I knew that if something strong comes, I have enough leeway. And I was like, okay, now this is a very good pointer. And that I kind of used, not used yet, but I added that tool in my kitty, so that in future, if I'm required, now I know that it's just not clouds, but I will also focus on what's happening at that moment. Is it a very, very strong lift? Then it's a sign of danger, and then I will react in a different way. The next question, what are the weather conditions which I cannot fly? So this is the weather condition in which I still think that I would rather have someone local who is saying that, no, this is safe to fly. Don't worry, go and fly. So this is my comfort level. So you have to find out that as far as weather is concerned, what is that which you are okay to fly, which you're not okay to fly. Now, especially for Kamshet flying or a Panchgani flying, you would mostly focus on your takeoff comfort. You wouldn't take off in like 25 or 30 kilometers per hour. Neither you would want to take off in 0 kilometers, because Kamshet, we are used to windy takeoffs. It supports us, and our techniques are more stronger in terms of windy takeoff. But of course, if you want to practice kiting or you want to practice strong wind takeoffs, you won't go to Beer and practice that. Kamshet is a relatively best possible option, or any coastal site. Okay. Next thing is, what are the tools to understand flying weathers, which we will be talking. The tools in terms of your understanding of weather, it is a macro weather, the high level picture, and a micro weather, right? At a particular local site, how it is behaving, the atmosphere, how it is behaving with the particular terrain. So this is one. Next thing is your experience and your understanding. This is the next tool which you will always have to remember, that what do I know? And if I have taken a decision, and if you're not an advanced pilot and if you are in doubt, it's always good to ask a local pilot, your instructor, and get your facts validated. I'm going to give a very beautiful example, which after some slides about this, that even sometimes you ask a local instructor, but there are certain things in the atmosphere and even in the weather which are not very predominantly shown, and it can come across as a surprise. That's why the toolkit which you have, it should be really strong, and that is what which will keep you safe and competent. Okay. And the last one is flight planning based on weather. So I just spoke about that with Pratik, and I gave you a perspective that depending on your skill set, depending on where you're flying, and what kind of flying you want to do, you will decide the plan. I mean, someone like Rohit, Sajid, who really come pretty often now in Kamshet, every weekend they're there and fly. So they are not just showing up on the weekend. They're actually, the study is happening throughout the week. And now they're deciding, okay, I think today is like just go to Pavna and we will just play close to the contour, learn some wingovers. But if they see that because today is a very good unstable day, so they have done really nice triangles and good small mini XC flights in Kamshet. So all these things will open up when you ask these questions and try to find out the answers. Okay, cool. Let's move on. Yeah, this is again, I won't take much time in this. I just wanted to give you a perspective, whether to fly or whether not to fly. Okay. So in one of the interviews on TV, I had seen one popular celebrity of Hollywood conducting an interview of NASA scientist. And now she's very casually saying that I really like science, but I was very bad at maths and I really I don't know, like I'm not good at maths. So is it okay? Can I learn science without maths? And the scientist was like, he was a bit amused. And then he said that maths is a language of science. You can't um, really understand and go in depth and dive in depth of science without maths. And that kind of really struck in my head, and I felt like this is something which is I can relate to flying, because without weather you can't fly. We are it's a it's a nature dependent sport, weather dependent sport. uh, the weather is invisible. I mean, you have science, but it is not readily, the information is not available. You have to interpret things, you have to analyze things, and then you actually see what's happening, and then the final learning comes out. So I would say weather is kind of a language for flying. Uh, I mean, you will see pilots who are flying for years, and maybe they would say that I'm not really interested in weather. It's boring for me. I would say that a, 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 a part which is required to complete a thing, it's missing. So this is the importance of weather. Okay. Safety, I think we have talked enough. We have given a lot of examples for you to understand. Safety depends on weather. Okay. We will give you more examples and show you some photographs to understand. Evolution. As a pilot, when you are evolving, as I gave you this basic example of, okay, 10 to 15 kilometers is something which I can manage, but beyond 25, it's not manageable. If you're taking this decision, you're already an evolved pilot. But if you are in a place where you go on the takeoff, others are flying, I think I can fly, you are not an evolved pilot. Okay. In Bali, in Kamshet, many places where there is a windy takeoff, we have seen, we go on the slope and we choose that place for takeoff. Now, this is again your evolution and your understanding that if the winds are strong, it will create a venturi on the top, and it will not allow me to penetrate. So let me go on the slope and then take off. Very good. So you have again evolved. Now let's talk about cross-country pilots. Now we were in Dehradun, and there used to be days where soundings were such that the place where we were actually doing takeoffs and landings, the altitude of that place used to come under layer of a stability. But if you go just 500, 700 meters on top of that and find a different takeoff, and now that area was completely unstable. Now, what I mean by this is if you take off from a lower takeoff, you will basically be able to soar for a bit. There will be some broken thermals, but not really a long cross-country flight, because the whole air mass is stable. It is not allowing any vertical movement. But if you go on a higher takeoff, now there the air mass is unstable. There is a lot of buoyancy, and now you can really actually plan a good cross-country flight. Now, this is something is very, very evident and can be seen in the sounding graph. So again, a perspective that if you have this knowledge, you can take wise decisions, and you won't be one of the pilot which says that, "Arey, aaj acha din nahi hai, and today is not a good day to fly, and I had a very bad flight." And there is some other person which is well informed and he's done his homework. He has gone and has done like 100 kilometers. So this is something which will help you to evolve as a pilot. And then type of flying. So you can, in terms of planning, like if, again, for an advanced pilot, I really want to master my wing overs. I want to master my spirals. So it's good to have a day where the wind is coming and creating kind of a dynamic lift. And generally, if the mountain is high, I think this is a very good setup. But in case the winds are weak, the configuration is very good, that thermals are rising. So obviously, you will not be carrying your acro glider. You would rather carry your cross-country glider. So these type of planning will help. Now, last season, Vrun had come for kiting for a week. And then he was always in touch with me. And I told him, Vrun, this is a week that you will have best possible kiting. So now, because his objective was clear and the forecast was matching, he came, did a kiting clinic, and then really improved his level drastically. You will be able to set the goals the way I'm telling you now, that kiting, acro, mastering some maneuver. For cross-country pilot, when we were flying in Italy, so what Kelly used to do, he was a master of the local weather. So when he used to check, okay, I think today is a good day for around 30 kilometers task. So he used to set up a 40 kilometers task. So there is a little bit of challenge, not like 100 kilometers. So that way you can actually set up that today I am going to plan 35, 50, 100, 200. There are competitions in US. There's a place called Shellin. They had kept a competition task of 260 kilometers, I think, which is a record. So they could do this because they could see that, okay, today's weather is super and maximum pilots should be able to finish the task. So they could create such an ambitious task. So same way, you guys, we all can understand weather, which will help us what we want to do and set up our goals. And this guy, Alex Robe, if you are reading magazines, you will know about him. I'll just quickly tell you a few pointers about him, which will, I mean, I personally got very impressed for what he does. And he gave a completely different perspective towards flying. So let's understand more about him. So he is actually a winner of 2015 and 2017 X contest. So there is a website called X contest, and everyone puts their tracks, and then I think top 6 flights are taken, and then points are given, and then there are winners in the contest. So it's not like, I don't think you get prize money or something, but this is just purely out of passion. And if you see the yearly record of this guy, he's always generally in top 5 or top 10. So that is, I think, really impressive. And that's not even a start of his thing. He just does in a year, in a season, 8 to 15 flights, and he achieves this feat. So can you imagine, just in 10 to 15 flights, he is able to win X contest. Sometimes his the lowest scored flight is 270 kilometers FAI triangle. I mean, this is like something which is really wow. I mean, this guy must be doing stuff extremely right, so he's into this place. Also, there are pilots who go to Brazil to create records like 400, 500 kilometers, and that kind of helps them to win the X contest. He also goes, but I think 2015 and 17 he didn't go, and despite of that, he won the X contest. So just brief about him, what he does. So basically, he started in around 2000, 2001. He never have had like a major incident or accident in paragliding. Basically, his trick is to find out the best possible weather days where thermal strength is nice. It's not very dangerous. It is something which is easy kind of a flying, but yet higher cloud base, possibility of long cross-country flying is more, and the day is longer. So generally his flight duration is around 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. And if you look at his end of the season flying hours, they are around 100 plus. Again, like kind of a shocker, but this guy is, I think, is really doing right things so that he can achieve this speed. Okay. What you guys should do if you want to know more about him, there is a podcast, Mayhem, Cloud-Based Mayhem. I can share you the links. You can ping me, and it's around 90 minutes. But he's sharing all his secrets, and very impressive. And the big credit he gives to 2 things. One thing is his understanding of weather. He generally knows like exactly his procedure is very thorough and clear. That from the 7th day he would see particular sites where he will know the pressure systems, the global weather, how the global weather is going to impact his particular site. Then on maybe 4th day, now he will consider that, okay, how is the humidity? What are the other factors? All these things. And then 2nd day, he will start with sounding. And the actual day, again, he will have 3-4 websites. He will consider the data. And then he will say, okay, I'm going and I'm doing this. And he's totally pre-planned and everything, the whole route, everything is set. So I think that is really commendable. So I would recommend that you guys go and really listen to his podcast. It will give you a very different perspective of how he has been flying. Okay, so anything you want to add up till now? If not, we can move. Okay. Sorry. I said he relies on two things. So one thing is his predictions, and the second thing is analysis. He says that he learns most of the things, even more than weather, he learns from the analysis. So after the flight, he would take his own flight track, and then someone else who was flown with him, or someone who has done better, and he will then compare, and he will see that, okay, why this decision gone wrong, why that particular site there was a lot of overdevelopment. So what did I miss? All these things, he gives credit to these things. Okay. Let's move on. Who does flying predictions? So in India, generally we have seen IMD, NARL, and of course all the websites, Windy and international websites are also available. While doing the research on Meteor, I really understood a lot about how what efforts are the private companies or government are taking towards understanding the weather. So just a brief again for you guys to really appreciate about the weather is there are weather stations in the sea, over the land, and surprisingly, when I was doing the research, I found that there is a weather station which is dedicatedly installed in Panchgani, which is checking the clouds over Sahyadris, because India's weather is driven largely by Sahyadri and Himalayas. And I think that's a very good news, because now we will start getting more and more data, accurate data, and again, which will help us to understand what's happening and build our understanding. Okay. Then airports, then even the aircrafts, they have the weather systems which are collecting the data and feeding it to modeling systems. Okay. Weather balloons, as we taught you in school, weather balloons are sent twice a day, either from some airports, or there are some dedicated laboratories which are sending the weather balloons, and they are actually giving you the real-time data, and that real-time data is now used in forecasting and as well as history of data. The big change happened in weather forecasting when satellite came into picture, because still that before satellite we were relying mostly on these things, but now satellite has really changed the game. And like you can go on IMD and it generally is updating the home page every few minutes, and it is giving you the live picture of what's happening over India, what kind of air mass is coming, and it is really very informative for you to understand, to plan, especially if you're a hobby pilot. If you want to plan the weekend, you can actually see what kind of weather you can expect and get the most out of your weekend. Okay. Then of course the old data and ships. So all these things and plus many more are responsible to collect the data. Now, let's just touch base upon weather models. So weather models these are like created in the computer, supercomputers, and these are mathematical models. All these data are fed to these models, and there are different equations. And if you read about it, everyone who is not a meteorologist would say it's a complicated process. So I would do the same thing, because it must be a complicated project. It's not a process, because it's not very easy for you as a layman to really understand that how exactly they must be doing this thing. Okay. So these are the few names: GFS, NEMS, Meteor Blue, which are different models. every model has its own objective. Now, some models are specifically checking the ozone layer, or for farmers, they are collecting the data. Some are collecting the data for, doing the analysis of the data for wind, temperature, humidity. So every model has its own objective. And this model, the output depends on the incoming feed. Okay. Now, in India, what we have generally seen is, not in India, but in Kamshet, GFS, which we have been using, which is generally pretty accurate. But if you look at the example which I have written, the GFS 22 kilometers model, it's basically, the resolution is not so great, and it doesn't work well in mountains. So it doesn't consider what's happening locally. And that's why I think even in Beer, there is no weather station dedicated on like Big Face or at a higher altitude. And that's the reason the changes which generally happen at around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, which we know by experience that it generally happens, but these are not really forecasted by the model, mostly. Okay. Just to give you a mental picture of how the model works. So the whole Earth is mapped by the grid system, and the length of the grid and the square, the length and height of the grid, it varies from model to model. So for this GFS, it is 22 kilometers. For some models, it is 8 kilometers. But if it is 8 kilometers, that means the quality of the data should also be higher so that the interpretations are good enough. Okay. And that's how we get the forecast. So when you are now checking the forecast on Windy or Windfinder, and when you read these words, it shouldn't appear Greek to you. You should at least be able to appreciate that, okay, this is a weather model. Some data is being fed to that, and it is now depending on certain equations giving us the result. For us, paragliding pilots, the main thing for us to know is you will get immense data when you are actually wanting to analyze the weather forecast. But what works for my particular site is something you have to deduce by your experience of checking data and actually seeing which is matching and which is not matching. So clearly in Kamshet on a windy side, ECM WF doesn't work. Mainly GFS generally works. So yeah, so I hope this is like a brief and you're clear. Okay, now this is interesting. So I just took this snapshot from Google Earth, and in my flying career, flying with Avi and all the instructors, when I was like being curious and trying to analyze that why in Kamshet, why 4 months we have easterly, 4 months westerly, then monsoon is coming, and why such systems are not there in France, in UK, why beer season is for a month. So these things kind of, still I don't have all the answers, but I could correlate and understand when I started reading about the weather that why the answers of why started coming up. So now this is India here. These two pins here, first one is Kamshet, the southern one is Panchgani, and on the north it's Beer here. Okay. Now, again, maybe in a different Zoom meeting, we will be discussing more about these air masses, but just a quickly we will touch base upon it. Here, the lower yellow line is the equator. This is Tropic of Cancer, and Kamshet here, we are exactly close to the Tropic of Cancer. We are not exactly on the equator. Okay. Now, because first is we have Sahyadris which are very close by, and the next thing here is we have a huge sea. And now because we are close to the tropics, the sun's exposure is pretty high. So now the combination is sun, which is heat and temperature, and water. So you will have more of a humid air mass, and that's why there are the Pavna season starts. The southwesterlies when they start. You can clearly feel the humidity in the air mass at around 6 o'clock when you land, and when you're packing the glider, your glider starts to become wet. And now you know it's because of the source of the air mass. Now, from October to around mid-Feb, the winds are coming from northeast. So northeast is totally a land. So this is generally called as continental air mass, and the sea air mass is called as maritime air mass. Now, because it is coming over the land, comparatively now, it will have less humidity. So that's why the chances of rains are extremely thin. And even though if rain comes, it has never happened that it is raining for 5 days, 6 days. It's a one-off thunderstorm, which comes and dispersed all the humidity, and again, life is back to normal. So now, at least you can imagine when the air mass is coming from land, I can expect these things. From it is coming from the sea, I can expect it to be more clouds, more humid, and stuff like that. Okay. Then another properties of the air mass, it's defined by from where it is coming from. Is it coming from the tropics? Is it between tropic and polar, which is a polar air mass? And then is it Arctic? So if it is Arctic, then of course it is very cold. Cold air mass cannot store too much of humidity, so it will be dry. So it will be dry air mass which is coming. So again, if you're flying in Europe and you have northerly winds coming, so you will have your interpretations based on these things. So I think it's a good way of visualizing that how the air mass which is coming, how it is impacting. Now, one thing is air mass, but now the second thing is how is it interacting with my terrain? Like say, like example, like Kamshet. Kamshet, the winds are, the flying is totally, I mean, mostly derived by winds. Our mountains are not very high. So we are dealing with mostly meteor wind. It's not that it doesn't happen in Kamshet that there are anabatic winds are flowing and there are like really predominant katabatic winds are flowing. It does happen, but at a very minuscule level. Similar thing you would see more in maybe Bir, because now there is a high mountain. Okay, now there is a high mountain. And now the sun's exposure, because the winds from the sea level, they are not coming into picture when we are talking about Bir. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to give you an idea that just where we are on Earth, our place with respect to the equator and poles, it is defining so much. Okay, and I think Bir in itself, it has its own micrometeorology. Just the way we are dependent on meteor winds in Kamshet, mostly. I'm not saying always. Similarly, in Bir, you will not just check wind finder and say, okay, I'm going to fly. You will mostly be making wrong decisions. In Bir, other than wind finder, you will be checking windy, XE skies, sounding, and then you're making your decision, because the altitude is high. And now because Himalayas, the mountain ranges are going up to 7,000, 8,000 meters and protecting different kind of a air mass. So it is creating its own aerology. So that's a different beautiful world there. So yeah, so I just wanted to say that. Now let's go to Europe. Now in this, I am not sure if you can see the pin, but look at the cursor. So this is Saint Andrews in France. And on the top here, this is UK. So there is a site, Lake District. Okay. Now, the line which you can see here, the yellow line, it's not even an equator. This is Tropic of Cancer. So now imagine how far we have gone from Tropic of Cancer, and now we are moving towards the polar regions. And because of poles, the air mass will be colder. And here from the south, the hotter air will be coming, and plus it is the land breeze and maritime also. So all these things are going to create frequent situations of what we call it as front, because we have warm weather, warm wind and cold wind, which is coming from the north, and they will be interacting with each other quite often compared to what happens in Kamshet, which is never. I mean, I have never seen a synoptic chart which is showing front in India, or at least, of course, in Kamshet. In Beer, at some level, it does happen, but I personally haven't seen any website which is publishing synoptic chart of like Himalayas where they are showing fronts. Correct me if I'm wrong, Prashant sir. Okay.
No, you're right, Sachin. Basically, the frontal weather happens at higher latitudes. And at our latitude, where we are in India, it's mostly called the ITCZ, Intertropic Convergence Zone. That is what the movement of the ITCZ decides the monsoon patterns, how they come in and go. So you have the easterly and the westerly winds, which are basically controlled by the ITCZ. You're right about that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir. So I think if possible, we can talk about ITCZ in one of the sessions so that again, but yeah, I mean, if you Google, there is enough information available, but yeah, no harm discussing about it. So yes, so when we were flying here in France, we had gone for 1 week's expedition, and very unfortunate, it was the area mostly was under warm front. So out of 7 days, we only had 2 good flying days. Otherwise, we couldn't fly. So as you know, warm front, it stays for longer duration, very slow moving, always drizzling, and that really hit us. Again, if you have talked to pilots in UK, they generally say that it's mostly cloudy and we hardly get to fly, is because again they are mostly close to the polar regions, and the frontal weather has a big impact in UK. Okay, so I hope again this has put things into perspective. Okay, now let's talk about some incidents, how a particular terrain and weather impacts our flying. So generally in Kamshet, you hardly have heard that, okay, there was an incident in Kamshet because of cloud suck. We never have towering clouds, or even though we generally see we are so used to not flying in clouds, so we generally can easily identify and we generally avoid that. But you will generally hear, okay, the pilot got dragged on the takeoff. The pilot was stuck in the Venturi, and luckily he had to use the speed bar and he landed on the top. So generally, things related to strong wind incidents you would hear in Kamshet. Otherwise, you will not hear other types of incidents in Kamshet. One more reason is Kamshet is mainly student pilots are flying, and we use generally 8 to 11 window, and in the evening around 3:30 to 6 o'clock window to fly, which is gentle kind of weather, and you put sun between 11 to around 3:30, and now the air mass is pretty unstable, and now the situations will be unpleasant for beginners. So that's why we don't fly, and that's why we haven't heard too many incidents about Kamshet. Okay. This is Vrun. As I told you, he had come in the month of December or Jan, where he planned his kiting clinic in such a way that it collided with the weather forecast and he could get the maximum out of it. Again, be very smart when you have an objective, you want to do something. As I said, if you want to really improve your reverse takeoffs, if you are going to be for a week, maybe there are afternoons you get nice wind on the landing. You will be able to improve skills, but the kind of skills you would improve in Kamshet, which will be much, much better. At the same time, if you want to improve your thermaling skills, but your comfort level is still not reached at a good level, Beer is a better place where between 11 o'clock to around 12:31 or evening around 3:30, after 3:30, thermals are still nicely working, and you just go in and latch in and you understand, oh, that's how it feels, and that's how I go up, and it's not really giving you a lot of troubles. So you really have to smart to understand which weather will suit what kind of flying I'm looking for. Okay. This is our favorite place, Panchgani. Now, as far as the topography is concerned, Kamshet and Panchgani. Panchgani is at a higher level than Kamshet. So here, the temperature gradient in the night and the day is much, much higher. That's why the thermal strength is pretty good. But the picture which you are seeing here is the tabletop, which are like these flat 3, 4, 5 kilometers flats which are available on the top of the mountain. And these guys generally kick in really nasty dust devils in the afternoon. We have actually are flying, and then we are actually looking around 3, 4 kilometers far. There's like a huge dust devil which has been created on tabletop, and we are like running away for our lives. So again, the type of terrain decides what kind of flying you can expect, and the knowledge of the weather, knowledge of the altitude of this place, your own knowledge of that local place of flying, and plus a local guy who will give you some certain tips and tricks. All these things will define your safety envelope. Okay, let's go ahead. This is beer. I think, yeah, I've covered a lot about beer, but just a quick example. There was a competition in beer, and the cloud base was maybe almost at the takeoff level. The day was progressing very, very slow, and the organizers were taking their time to understand that, okay, what should we do? Should we cancel? Should we keep the task? But they decided to keep a task of around 35 kilometers, and almost 70% of the task, 80% of the task, we were below the takeoff and just below the cloud, and we almost like maybe 50% of the pilots, they could finish the task. So what is the learning from here is the task committee did not take a nasty decision. They were aware of the local weather, they were aware of the forecast, they were aware of the pilot skills, because generally pilots who are doing the comms, they're at a good level. All these things made them understand that a 70-kilometer task, something which is unpractical, but let's make most of the day by keeping the task of around 35, which is not too long, but yet challenging. And I must tell you, it was like one of the it's like I will never forget. It's a memorable task for me. And I remember the main director of the competition, he said that you put competition pilots in any task and you would see that they will come out with some kind of a result. So that was something which is very nice, very cool. But that also gave me understanding that just by looking at clouds and getting scared is not good enough for me. I should go more in depth. I should go in the sounding. I should check if there are low level clouds. Are there alto level clouds? Are there cirrus level clouds? If there are only low level clouds, then there is nothing which is feeding them from the top. And the chances of having something which is a very unstable air mass or a thunderstorm or a CB cell is very rare. So this is something which you guys will understand as you go and progress in your flying and when you have this knowledge. Okay. Okay. Another interesting example here. This is Greece, Mount Olympus. Avi was there. Avi was flying tandem with Anita in this particular flight. And so I'll just give you a brief. I hope you can see the cursor here. So this is the sea here. And this is Mount Olympus range, complete range. This is a beach here, which is the official landing when we are flying from here. And this mountain is not like Bali, which is Bali coastal flying site. The takeoff height is hardly 80 to 100 meters. But here, Mount Olympus, it's almost more than 800, 900 meters. So again, this should click something in your head that because the altitude is changed, the air mass will have a different effect because of adiabatic processes, which we will talk in our sounding session. Okay. So the thing was, we went on the takeoff. We were around 15 pilots. Bruce Goldsmith was conducting this XC workshop. And the day was quite dull. The visibility was poor. It was cloudy, almost 100% cloudy. And the local pilot said, it's okay. I mean, it doesn't look dangerous. I think if you take off and if you use this bowl on the left-hand side, you should be able to soar for good 1 hour or so, and then you can go and land. So we were like, okay, nice. This is very beautiful sight, and we were all excited. We started taking off, and now we went here and we were flying. Avi had taken off earlier, and then he flew here for some time, and then he went towards the landing, and there was a beautiful fort. So he soared there nicely, a very romantic flight with Anita, and then after that he went for landing. Now, what happened is, over the sea here, there was a huge CB cell which was completely hidden, which was not even forecasted, and it was not even visible to the naked eye, partly because of the visibility. And there is a scientific term to this. This is called as embedded thunderstorm. The thunderstorm is actually hidden. It is embedded in something. And now at any point of time, I mean, you can't even predict that if it is there. So you don't even know when it will come. So we are nicely, merrily flying here. And within few moments, this burst off and huge clouds started coming towards this side. And now the pilots, we are flying here, and now we are actually doing a race against the clouds. So the clouds are here, and we are flying here, and we are trying to somehow just go ahead of that and go towards the beach. Unfortunately, some pilots could do that, and some got trapped. And they really had to do a lot of hard work to come down. And I mean, I'm not kidding, like each and every pilot in that flight had some or the other story of their lifetime to tell. And just to give you an idea, this is what it looked like. Full here, you can see there's one, I think it was maybe Bruce clicked me, so I'm coming here. There are a couple of pilots coming here. And it was like a very dangerously beautiful scene, I would say. It was not something which was very comfortable. A video all the time beeping at like your forward speed is around 5 kilometers, 4 kilometers, 3 kilometers, -1, again 2, 3. So it was kind of an emergency, and we will never now forget this concept called embedded thunderstorm. And if we are into such situations, the best thing is to quickly land. Okay, so this was one weather phenomenon we really understood well there. And the second thing, which again made a good sense, was convergence. So again, the air mass which is coming from the sea and the air mass coming from over the land, it used to form a convergence line, which actually, I mean, I personally couldn't use it. Avi had used it once. Bruce was talking at a different level where he said that the air mass which is coming over the sea, it is going up the mountain, and you can imagine another mountain over a mountain because of this air mass. And now the land breeze is coming, hitting this air mass and creating a ridge soaring effect. And when I heard that, I felt like, okay, this is very difficult to imagine, but that's the beauty. I mean, you interpret things and they actually start working out. This is the real essence of our free flying. So yeah, we learned a lot in this particular trip, and especially, I mean, flying other than your local site. This is what the value addition you have, that you really understand how things work globally, and it actually makes you a complete and competent pilot. It's not that you just know one kind of atmosphere. You are ready for million possibilities. Okay, fine. So that was about the examples. Now let's talk just a quick summary of APPS syllabus. So APPI 1, 2, 3, and 5. This is the syllabus for different pilot levels. This is kind of a baseline, I would say, that after this session, if your curiosity is improved, what you should try to do is please go and dig in your notes of Templepilots, which you had made while we were giving you theory sessions, capsules, and then start going online, start reading. I would love to have be part of a group of pilots where we are just talking about weather and just like randomly helping each other to understand different concepts. So yeah, quick overview. So we have a question. Let me just see the question. In the case where the air mass over the mountain forms a mountain, makes a rich soaring possible, the densities would made a lot of, absolutely. Yes, the density will make a difference, Deepak. In fact, even the look of this, I mean, you would not see generally such kind of really thick kind of a formation of cloud over the mountains. Generally, this is mainly driven by a very humid air mass. But again, I'm not saying that this is how it is. You might see sometimes such clouds over the mountain, but generally what I'm talking about. So the local features, the areas around our particular site really defines the features of the air mass. Okay. So yeah, here P1 theory, P2 theory was very easy to understand. Then basic type of clouds, we will be covering, as I said, a separate session on clouds. Lot to learn on clouds, very practical subject. Evolution of the day, anabatic, katabatic, stability, instability. Please go through these topics because we have covered this, and we don't want to make this as a teaching session. Rather, it should be more something which is new to you, and you are taking efforts to understand basics, and then it's kind of a team effort here. Okay. Then about global weather, high and low pressure systems. This is something which I understand you will have some specific questions. So please get the specific questions and we will answer them. Internet tools, we will have separate session on this. And the last one is skew-t. So yes, skew-t is something which even when we teach, it is difficult to understand. So we will have a separate session on skew-t. All right. Now, the main parameters, especially for us, paragliding pilots, free flying pilots, these are the main parameters which, when you study the weather, you should be checking for these things. Again, this will vary depending on your objective. If you're just doing dynamic soaring, then you wouldn't go too much in depth. But if you are planning for cross-country flying on the same site, then yes, all these things would matter. So quickly about winds, as I said, Kamshet is dominated by meteor winds. We don't have local effect, which is like really predominant. Panchgani a little bit higher, then yes, there is a local effect. Even Panchgani is dominated by wind. And there are many incident and accident which have happened to the new pilots, even though they are experienced, but they think that, okay, it's okay to go low in the lee, and they have had severe major accidents. So local knowledge again plays a big role. Then anabatic winds, valley winds. This is something which happens in Beer. Like valley winds, if you are not, I mean, I don't mean Beer, but higher mountains in Alps and Beer-like mountains. Valley winds is a very local phenomenon, and winds can go up to around 25, 30 kilometers per hour, 35 kilometers per hour. But in the valley, and the same mountain on the top, it will be hardly 5 kilometer, 8 kilometer, 10 kilometers. So that's a very local effect, which is, again, if there are no weather stations, which is not considered in the forecast. So wind plays a big role. Even though there is a day where you have nice thermals beautifully going up, but if there is too much of wind, they can all go haywire and they will break the thermal, and the whole day will be not a very good day for XC. So it's just not one factor, but the combination of wind, temperature, pressure, humidity, and lapse rate defines what kind of day you can expect. Okay. So So yeah, temperature, as I said, in Panchgani, I would check just a temperature gradient. In Beer, I would check physically what are the sunny faces. Because again, as I said, it's not dominated by winds. The whole air mass is dominated by sun's exposure. So if you go on the takeoff at 9 o'clock, everyone is taking off from easterly because easterly faces are getting heated up. And then 11 o'clock around southerly takeoff starts working, 4 o'clock westerly takeoff. So a typical mountain forecast work in B. Then of course pressure, we check isobars, then pressure systems, physical pressure systems, cyclones, which will define what is going to happen in next 4 to 5 days. Humidity will define clouding. It will define the energy in the thermal. If it is too dry, but everything, all the parameters are good, but humidity is very less, thermals will be rough. Humidity is 50, 70%, it will be much benign. If it is too much, it can turn into clouding and it might rain. Okay. And the last one is lapse rate. Again, we will cover this in sounding. Okay. So these are the main parameters to look for. Internet tools. So Windfinder, I think each one of you have used Windfinder when you are in school, or the forecast which we write on the board. It's from the Windfinder. Very basic tool. Because see, imagine you just want to go and do soaring flight. You just check Windfinder. It shows possibility of rain, cloud coverage, wind direction, wind strength. And that's good enough for you to take a decision. But windy, now you have oceans of data. You have pressure systems. I'll just quickly show you the websites which we were talking. Yeah, so that's windy, very simple and very effective for calm shit like flying, even in Bali like flying, very efficient. But you add more different objective, cross-country flying or some other aspect, kiting. Now you would want to see that, okay, if there is a lower pressure from here, then okay, it will have an impact on calm shade. Now these isobars are so much close to each other. Okay, that means I can expect a stronger wind. Generally, if the winds are around 10, 12, isobars will not be so close to each other. Even when I look at the reading on the isobar, it is showing at 1002, which is less than 1013. So it's a lower pressure. So what kind of air mass which I can expect? Lower pressure day, the air mass is easily bubbling out. High pressure day, the air mass is sticking to the ground. So again, you start forming this deductions. Okay. Then other website which is very is Meteor Blue. So Meteor Blue is something which, if you go for a paid version, then the kind of tools they have, meteorograms and stuff, they are quite in depth, but mostly for cross-country flying. But as a beginner, but if you're learning, I think it's worth the investment. It's a paid site. Some features are paid. Windy is absolutely free. I think Meteor Blue is the model when we were flying in Dehradun. It was pretty accurate. Windy or other sounding graphs were not giving so much of accurate reading. So I hope now you understand that how you try and find out different sources of data, and then you come down to one and you understand, okay, this is it. For this place, I will use this. Okay. Then yeah, XC Skies, I think those who have done thermal cross-country course with us, you are aware of this. This is CalmShade. You can compare the data between the models. It shows the cloud base on different days. So you understand after 2 days, it's a higher cloud base. It directly shows you XC potential, updraft velocity, thermal strength. Beautiful. Very, very, very good website. And yes, this data is, you won't get it for free. You have to pay yearly subscription. Okay. Fine. So let's move ahead. There is an app on Android, skew-t. You can download it and then you can start observing the soundings of, say, for example, November months, December months, Jan, Feb. And now monsoon, the whole atmosphere is so humid from the ground level till the top. You will see both the lines of environmental lapse rate and dew point are sticking to each other throughout. It rains so much, but this rain is not like a thunderstorm. That's why you will see the Cape value is almost like very, very less, but yet it is raining continuously. So I can understand you don't know these terms, but as I said, we will cover this, and we really will make sure that this particular tool knowledge you have. Okay. And then yes, Prashant sir has also mentioned one more name, so you can download that for Apple. Okay, so the last slide now, I hope now from our discussion and from the information which we have shared with you today, you can have a system where you are not just going for flying based on अरे मैं flying के लिए जा रहा हूँ तो आ रहा है क्या? It's just not based on this. I mean, it's okay, you can go with your friends, but your decision is just not based on this factor, but there are more intellectual logical steps which you have taken as far as preparation in terms of weather is concerned. Okay. Now, low airtime pilots. I mean, you know how Ankush, Jitu, Ganpat sir, Avi, every time we go on the takeoff, the first thing what we do ask you is, guys, 5 minutes and you will do wind and sight assessment. Again, why we do that? Because you go into this habit of doing wind and sight assessment without fail. It should be your instinct. It should be your natural habit, which can easily, you may forget when there is a gap, when you have your own group and you have pilots who are not really bothered about understanding this aspect of flying. Okay. After this, I always remember when Avi says that, okay, now imagine how the wind is coming, hitting the mountain and creating the airflow around it. So this visualization of aerology is supremely important, because a little bit of wind direction change, and now the whole air mass will be different. The venturi areas will be different. The rotors, the places where the rotors would start, they will be different. As Avi said initially, if winds are super cross, and if there is a kind of a finger on the mountain which is going down, now this will start throwing side rotors, which this is something which is invisible. You should be able to imagine this and should be able to easily predict this when you are on the site. Okay. Then other than this is something which happens on the site. Other than that, your preparation in terms of knowledge of different internet tools. And then when instructor is saying, like a typical example is, we are on the Pavna site and now Ganpat sir will say, abhi 15 minutes mein flying chalu ho jayegi. Okay, Kaisar sir ab ready ho jaiye. And everyone is wondering that, okay, how do you know? But this is the importance of the local knowledge. This is the importance of preparation well in advance. This is the importance of experience. So don't undermine this particular aspect. If the instructor is telling you something, giving you a hint, then please try to interpret that why he said that, why that happened, and how he was accurate. If he was inaccurate, okay, sir, ye kyun nahi work hua? You have to be curious to understand, because as I said, this topic is such that we are not scientists or meteorologists that we will make sense of everything. We should make sense of things in such a way that we are flying safe and we are becoming better pilots. Okay, now for advanced pilots, those who are flying regularly, are more ambitious, are into cross-country flying. Now, other than what I have mentioned in the lower time pilot, plus you should have good understanding of the weather system, what is happening around my local site, weather charts, synoptic charts, soundings, then different internet tools, and plan your flight depending on the weather. So the guy, Alex Robe, which I was talking about, so the place where he stays in Alps, there are many sites, like he stays in Austria, so he flies in Switzerland, flies in Italy, France. So he can just drive for 4 hours. So that's his logic. If the site is around 4 hours vicinity, I will drive, and I will fly. And the weather is so because it's a higher latitudes and it's a high mountains. Weather is so independent of all these areas. So, say for example, if one is flying and doing like 200 kilometers near France, maybe in Switzerland there is absolutely no flying. So that's what he does. That okay, even let me find out 4 hours drive, which is the best possible area, which will give me 9 to 10 hours of flying and a good cross country flying. That's how he decides, and then he drives, and that's how we plan. So look at the immaculate planning this guy is doing. Another reason he being so finicky about this is his family commitments and his work commitments. Okay, and the last one, which is I think I personally, because as a traveling pilot, we have seen nothing can beat local knowledge. I mean, you can read and really be geek about all these things, but the pointers which local pilot would give you will be priceless. So anyone, you guys want to add anything to I said? Let me check the chat section. Any questions, anything? Okay, perfect. It's 7:30. Okay, I think there are no questions.
Fine, you can. Okay, Avinash has a question, I think.
No, I think he's just asking any.
Yes, I had a question. In Windy, you saw the isobars. Sorry to quickly. Oh, somebody is calling as well. Okay, it was quickly to ask. I was seeing isobars for Windy, but when I tried, I couldn't make out the isobars. How do you do that in Windy?
So there is an option. You can activate that option if we have time. So I will just quickly show that.
Okay. Okay.
There are many things in Windy which you can turn on and off, and it's very powerful. Powerful
Yes.
tool.
Yeah. I was actually doing kiting in Dapoli on the beach, and the speed was around 14 kilometers per hour. So I was trying to search this option, which you could see the lines.
Yeah. So as you can
Okay.
see, pressure. There is a button here, so you can turn it on and off.
Okay. And there's a paid version also, right, for this Windy?
I have never used paid. Never had to use it, so we are using the free version only.
Okay. Oh, nice.
But Meteor Blue is worth investing in if you are doing XC kind of a flying, and even XC skies is beautiful.
Okay, great, man. Thanks. You answered my query very beautifully.
Okay. So yeah, before I give it to Avi, so my objective of this session was to guys give you an idea of how to look at the weather, how we can be curious and appreciate the data which is available to us for free, and start building a knowledge base as a community, especially because Kamshit we have never explored for cross-country flying. Reason being, we have a upper ceiling limit, and also generally, mostly we are flying as a beginner over there. But going forward, we would like to explore mini XC options where we still respect the ceiling and we can still achieve the task of the day. And we would like to create a knowledge base in this direction. So if you guys feel that this is something which has created interest in you, we would like to take this forward and make it a bigger thing. Over to you, Avi.
Okay. Yeah, Malhar just wrote a comment there, which is true. It's quite advanced in Europe. Like I was in Switzerland at home, in my nephew's place, and I could turn on the TV and, look at the camera, which is there on the takeoff. I can see, sitting at home, the view of takeoff itself. And of course, like also the forecasting for paragliding pilots for particular sites is gone quite ahead. I think
we have billboards posted on the takeoff, which shows you what kind of wind is perfect, what kind of
yes.
temperature, even temperature to the minutest detail.
Nice.
So it's good to fly.
Yeah, just to add on to what Mallar is saying now, what I have understood, Prashant sir, correct me if I'm wrong, I think India now has reached at a place where we have dedicated satellites, we are collecting a lot of data. I think it is just that we are not, because the community of free flying and paragliding is so limited, there are no, the push towards understanding data for this reason is less. I don't think there is dearth of data, there is no lack of data. But the main thing I would say is the infrastructure for paragliding pilots is missing. So what we can do is we can write to IMD. The way I could find out about this weather stations in Panchgani, we can write to them. We can initiate the conversation, and we can move towards what Mallar is saying, where even we were impressed that you turn on the radio on the safety frequency. Every 1 hour they are telling you the wind speed and everything, and you're like so well informed. And that's really cool. That's the next level. And I don't think the problem is lack of data. I think we need to work towards that because the community is so small. We don't have that.
You're right, Sachin. Basically, what we need to do is get the parameters which we need ready. We approach IMD and they'll give you whatever you need. And you're right. The latest satellites give you very, very updated data now.
Okay. Thank you, Prashant.
So Bhavin, I think we did answer your question. The first slide was on this topic, and also the last slide. In the first slide, we were talking about the question that you should be asking yourself regarding weather, and the last slide was for low airtime pilots and for advanced pilots. So you can just play this again. Okay. All right. I think fantastic session. Well done, Sash. That was nicely formulated and very well executed, and a good start to our series of flying weather. And we will now get together and decide what we bring in next in the next episode for flying weather. We are continuing with the other series. Coming Wednesday, we have a masterclass. We are taking up the topic of all about landings. So it'll be good to be there to understand the nuances of landing and different techniques of landing, and like that. And of course, we plan forthcoming sessions in XC series as well. So fantastic! Thank you very much for joining us and making it an enriching experience for all of us. Thank you, Sach, once again, and Nina for the support. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe and
thank you, guys.